old and past features in previous Formula 1 games that should be in F1 23 or future F1 game titles. That is the topic for today's video, because there are plenty of features, I think, in previous games gone by that we are all looking back with, maybe with a bit of nostalgia, but also some genuine desire, maybe, to get back in future titles. Some of them, I'm actually kind of confused at why they ever stopped doing them in the F1 games. And kicking things off, the biggest thing that I think needs to be brought back into future F1 titles is true F1 paddock vibes that we got from games like F1 2010, and then even further down the line in F1 2016 and 17 with those paddock vistas. I think going back to that first game, F1 2010, I think we can all agree that we loved the paddock vibes in that. Is it a bit of rose-tinted nostalgia? Yes, because there wasn't much else to it apart from just the world you were in the menu system. But I mean, Codemasters and EA love to bang on about F1 life so much at the launch of the game, and that ended up just being a main menu customization basically, and like a character and some multiplayer lobbies. So they're definitely not past putting some effort on that era of the game. But the difference is, in 2010 it really immersed you into the fact you're in a world of Formula 1. It wasn't just menus though, because you also did actually have some pen interviews right at the start of the game. That's how you actually, actually inputted your attributes for your profile, your name, your nationality, how many seasons you want to do, was all kind of baked into this official F1 press conference at the start of the game, where you sat down like they do every Thursday most race weekends and have a load of questions from some journalists. And then also there are some other interviews down the line, in between race weekends, of how you think you did, rivals. And we had that also even in very recent F1 games. I think the last time we had those was maybe F1 2020, I want to say. From 2021 they kind of got phased out essentially. Lots of characters actually have been phased out in general. I mean, even our agent isn't even a character we see anymore in the game, but that's a whole nother point entirely. But paddock vibes from 2010, I think all of us would like to see that again. Going inside motorhomes, not just 2010, 2011 they also had them as well, and then ever since 2011 it's been a bit of the less, familiar kind of surrounding for the F1 games. There have been some cool locations like wind tunnels, etc., but I think those paddock vibes just gave you that bit of immersion off the bat when you launched the game. And in 2016 and 17 they brought them back, and in an even better way. And looking back at videos now from F1 2016 and 2017, it does make me wonder, why on earth did they get rid of them? Because they were actually pretty good. Yes, they would get old after a while because you'd see the exact same surroundings, but that happens to every new feature. It becomes normal, it becomes mundane that you're going to see it every time after playing, hours upon hours of any game basically. But now comparing it to what you have in F1 22, it actually seems so creative and such a good way to immerse yourself in the F1 world. Subtle differences, like you would see the backgrounds change of the vista in F1 2016 and 17 depending on the circuit you're at. So you would see bits of the circuit or locations around the circuit in that vista, just to kind of ground you in the fact that you've moved to that circuit at that point in the calendar. You also had, just general hustle and bustle of your team and personnel. You had your engineers and agents come up to you. I mentioned the agent, kind of segues me into the second feature that I think could be brought back into future F1 games. It's just having that agent again that's visibly there. There was an agent in F1 2010, then it kind of went away. Then we got them back again for 2016 for a good stint from F1 2016 to F1 2020. And then now we don't really see our agent anymore. We don't even, when you get fired from driver career mode, you don't even get a cutscene now to say you're fired, which is obviously, I know you're not going to see that often, but was a fun part of the game if you were to, initiate yourself getting fired. But now, again, it's just an audio cue and a little lower third subtitle. Like, what happened to having this kind of essence of Formula 1 and this real life thing? It kind of all got stripped away in F1 22. I felt quite a fair bit in different areas of the game and kind of lost a bit of the life and immersion of this F1 world you're trying to create. Number 3 for me, a feature they could definitely bring back, is the kind of scenario modes they had in F1 2012. In 2012 it was called Champions mode because we had, a number of F1 world champions on the grid, so they made scenarios around them. But I think having scenarios that are based off what we've seen in previous seasons in real life, like 2022 for example, in F1 23, could we see different scenarios that happened last season and we could relive them out, but obviously in the 23 car cars and kind of, you know, rewrite history, or just basically base scenarios off what we've seen in real life, even going back to older F1 seasons, like, you know, some iconic scenarios of like Hamilton 2020. You've got a puncher, you've got to try and win the race still by driving to the end, and you've got Verstappen barreling down on you, or just other scenarios of taking tires longer, going on, you know, intermediates when it's still time for full wets but the rain is going to stop. Just little fun little games that I think, again, you would say now looking back at it, maybe yes, was it a bit of a novelty? Yes, but at the same time gives you something else to play, keeps it a little bit fresher, maybe for more casual players that aren't going to play through multiple seasons of My Team, where it gets, you know, eventually a bit more bonkers in later seasons compared to the very vanilla season 1 where the cars are still developing, etc., and the AI maybe are still, you know, super focused and, you know, they're not making many mistakes, etc. I think it just gives you that different kind of play style. And, you know, I talked about in a previous video about what F1 23 will look like, and I said I think there's going to be more party game, limited events, and multiplayer. In the same line, I think they could be making modes like that in single player, little scenarios. Number 4 is going to be pre-season events and testing in general, and maybe just a bit more interest into getting contracts, getting signed by teams. And this was a feature that was back on F1 2009 on the Wii. Yep, there's a Wii game that has a feature that I think should be brought into modern F1 games. On that game, you had to do some testing pre-season to maybe earn your first ever contract in a team. Now, obviously, with My Team, wouldn't work exactly the same way, but, you know, going off that and using that as an idea, how about having testing that you have to go through and you have to set a certain lap time to maybe then gain some extra R&D performance upgrades at the start of this season, and basically giving you more to do in between seasons. So when you have a regulation change, whether you're playing a driver career mode or My Team career mode, in between seasons you have these tests and these, you know, different things you have to do to maybe earn more upgrades to start this season off on a better foot. Number 5 for me is going to be bringing back the R&D tree visualization. Now, I know there are some nice funky new UI, you know, ever since F1 2021 into F1 22 with, you know, the actual components being shown as icons, but I do miss the R&D tree of being able to see how much of everything you've actually gone through, and that kind of cloud of fog, you know, role-playing game style system. And I've said this before, maybe in a previous games idea video, maybe this time last year or a couple of months ago, that why not have the best of both worlds? Why not have the R&D tree and then you simply zoom in and you can then see these cool UI icons like they have in the current F1 game? I think also it gives you a better idea when you're going from team to team and you look at other teams' R&D trees through driver career mode, for example. You can see the difference and the skews of aero, engine, you know, chassis with different F1 teams. That's also maybe another thing is, in general, I think you should be able to look at other teams' trees and maybe just see how far along they are, just to give a bit of interest. Number 6, very simply, red flags. The last game that had red flags in it was F1 2014, I believe, and regularly coming out was 2013. 2014, I think you rarely got a red flag, but they were built in to the game. I just don't understand what the reason is for not even having them. They were in the game for about 4 years. And now they're just not in it anymore, which doesn't make any sense. We do see red flags in the modern age of Formula 1. In fact, maybe, you know, by the FIA's standards of being, you know, very trigger happy sometimes, they might be more willing to do red flags in order to make a safe restart or, you know, fix an important barrier. So why not, if there's a multiple car collision or, you know, an AI or yourself hit a barrier and, you know, in theory it should be broken, the game brings out a red flag. You have that, you know, actual real world scenario where you'll go back to the grid, you get a fresh choice of tyres. It can sometimes be an advantage for some, a disadvantage for others. It can really shake up the race. Obviously, we saw that in play so much at one of the most thrilling races of last year in 2021 at Jeddah, at Saudi Arabia. That really threw it up in the air sometimes, the restarts and what was at stake in the championship at the time. So yeah, just a very odd one that we actually just seen that quietly just not be in the F1 game now for so many years, when it used to to be for at least 3 or 4 of them. And obviously the big one to end off, and it's one that I'm putting at the end because it's one that is going to constantly keep coming back because everyone and their mothers puts it down every time, is just classic cars getting back into the game. They got removed since F1 2020, I assume because of a licensing thing, but also I have a feeling EA have a bigger picture for how they want to bring classic cars back in comparison to how Codemasters used to do it. And so maybe there's a bit of difference of like marketing and strategy there with EA versus Codemasters, the studio that actually makes the game, but the game that actually owns, the company that actually owns the whole studio now and publishes the game. But it is obviously a feature that was actually tangibly there in the F1 games, and then again got removed, and we haven't seen it for 2 years and haven't had a real reason as to why it ever got removed. But let me know what you guys think about old features that you can remember of, or even smaller, minute ones that I can't recall now from memory. It's now been well over 12 years of these games that I've been playing, about 10 years on YouTube now. So let me know if there are features, small ones that I'm forgetting, that should be brought back into the modern F1 games, or even further back. Let's not maybe limit this to Codemasters F1 titles. Maybe other F1 games are older. Those of you who are a bit older on the spectrum, maybe, there are features that you remember playing when you were younger on F1 games that could definitely make their way into future ones, or should be making their way, I should say, into future F1 titles that would definitely bring the F1 game up in terms of stature. But if you have enjoyed this video, then be sure to hit the like button. Let me know what you thought in the comments below. Do you agree with the points I made? And then, as I said again, finally, let me know your pointers and other ones that you think are there that I've maybe missed. If you're new around here, then do get subscribed for weekly Formula 1 content. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.